everybody. This is Mike from Crit One and Done. I'm here with Dungeon Samster. Sam, say what's up to everybody.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm a
Um,
pull string doll.
Austin, Austin, Matt, how we doing on sound? Everything. So strong, bruh, in the chat is Austin from our group. But real quick, appreciate anybody that's going to come in, hang out. I'm going to be chatting with Sam for about the next hour or so about D&D, about TTRPGs, about anything else that that comes to mind. Again, I'm part of a. If you're familiar with Crit One and Done, we're a live play D&D channel. Um, Sam is also part of different D&D. We're gonna get into all that shit. But before we get started, real quick, I'm just gonna go through two of our sponsors for Crit One and Done. Our first sponsor is a company called Legendary Realms Terrain. They have been awesome to us. They do hand painted terrain that's ready to play, ready to get thrown on the board. If you're big into having the actual terrain, actual minis as you're playing out your sessions, they're great. They have all different types of terrain. They're constantly increasing and updating their collection. Great for newbies if you're not confident painting or you just don't want to get into it. Like me personally, I don't really have any interest in painting. Or if you are like Chris, who is also in our group who enjoys painting, but we have a huge stack of minis and terrain that are yet to be painted. Legendary Realms Terrain, lrterrain.com. They're awesome, ready to go, custom, hand painted, uh, comparable prices to any other unpainted terrain that you're going to find. Um, yeah, I know I'm not good at it, Chris. Shut up. But like I said, definitely check them out. You can use our discount code Crit One and Done, 10% off any order. And I also want to shout out Wizard Works Gaming. Their owner Dylan, we've been friends with him kind of from the get-go when we started Crit One and Done. He hooked us up with the first giveaway that we did. Dylan, he actually appeared in one of our more recent sessions. He does custom D&D items, accessories, coasters, dice boxes. He makes different types of rugs. If you've been following our page, I shared one of his posts. He did a Stitch rug that he made. And he does these really awesome TV inlaid gaming tables. Wizard Works Gaming, that's his Etsy page up there. But again, discount code Crit One and Done, get 10% off of any order. Just wanted to shout them out before we get going. All right. Again, I'm Mike from Crit One and Done. I'm here with Sam from Dungeon Samster. And so before we get into actual questions and talking and stuff like that, before we did this, I actually went, Sam, onto our Instagram, and I think we follow almost about 1,000 pages or something like that at this point. You were actually the ninth page that we followed from the very beginning, which was funny because
That's huge.
yeah, your name has always popped up. You're always kind of on our feed. I always check in with the different stuff that you're doing. Your content has always seemed really well put together, which for us who we're not natural content creators. I mean, me, Austin, Chris, we're all kind of in our late 30s. This is all really our first. Like I barely have a personal Instagram. Same thing with Austin. Same thing with Chris. And Matt, who's Matt, for anyone that doesn't know, Matt in our group is actually my younger brother. So he's the only one that's like kind of in that age, and even he's not a tech person at all. So that was one of the things right off the bat when I saw a lot of your different content was just well put together, well spoken to, which I can appreciate also. Um,
You can tell by all the talking I've done so far.
Um, but so just to kind of start kick it off, I wanted to ask because I feel like this is a little bit different for everybody. Where did your interest in fantasy stuff, gaming, TTR, whether it was like gaming video games, whether it was board games, whether it was movies, where did that interest kind of for you get started?
You know, my parents put the Lord of the Rings books in my brother's hands. We're 6 years apart when my brother was 14 years old. And that made me 8, and he had absolutely no interest. I'm not here to put him on blast. I have every inclination to think that he's probably not watching this stream because I think he's actually at a metal show that he's singing in tonight. Um, but he wasn't interested, and I needed a book for a book report all the way back when I was like 8 or 9, and I jumped right into The Hobbit. And The
Nice.
Hobbit slaps. If you haven't had a chance to read The Hobbit, it holds up. It was intended as a kid-friendly book, not just meant for kids. But it definitely stood alone as its own story. I loved the hell out of it. It was like the fifth diorama in a row that I made out of Legos in place of actually writing a book report in my class. And my teacher said, "This is great. It seems like you really took in the material. You have to stop doing all of your assignments in Lego." Um, but if I had to point at all the interests, because as a little brother, I was obsessed with everything that my brother was into. So that was Star Wars, Ninja Turtles, Batman, the metal music I see some people getting hyped about in the chat. But the one thing I glommed onto that he just wasn't all that interested in was Lord of the Rings, which is the gateway drug for so many people to get into fantasy. So it started all the way back then. It only got heightened once those movies came out around 2000, and then I tried reading Fellowship of the Ring and the Two Towers, and I dropped off about 2 to 3 chapters into the Two Towers 20 years ago. But I'm back at it, trying it again.
Nice.
My girlfriend is a genuine Tolkien scholar. We've been together for five
Jesus.
years, and as I'm sure you can imagine, there's been a little bit of pressure on me to try to reread the books. In our time together, these last 5 years, I've reread The Hobbit. I'll plug it again, probably 3 times, and I've gotten through the Fellowship again once, and right around chapter 3 or 4, the Two Towers again. It's a great book. Super interested in reading it. I just have a bad time paying attention, and I listen to most of my books in audio form and when I'm running or walking. So had to move on to something else. Uh, that's a long-winded way of saying when I was 8 years old, I found Tolkien's work, and in and out and around that and into every other aspect of fantasy I can get my hands on. I've been a big fantasy guy since I was about 8.
Nice. That's
And going
awesome.
back to what you were saying, I'm not in my late 30s, but I am 34. So I've been around for a little bit, and I've taken in a lot of media that really leans into me liking fantasy quite a lot. And I also don't know how tech works. Yeah,
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Actually, The Hobbit I have read. It's been a while, but that is the only one that I read. I mean, I read it and when I was a senior in high school, I think. So when I was like
nice.
18, I read it, and then the movies had been out, before then, but I loved. I mean, everybody loves. If you don't like any of those movies, like there's something wrong with you. But I can
If you don't at
still
least want to be Aragorn a little bit, then
a
something's going
little
on in your
bit,
life.
like you have to. But that was, I mean, that was really cool. Reading The Hobbit for the first time, and like I was an English major in college, so
Nice.
English and lit and all that stuff for me was, all those kind of stories was really cool.
Oh
My
yeah.
gateway into that kind of stuff was I was the older brother, so I'm the oldest of three.
Hmm.
But for me, it started with gaming. Like my dad got me a PlayStation when I was 5 years old, and I started playing games.
Nice.
If anybody knows Rayman or Battle Arena Toshinden, like Battle Arena Toshinden was an old school, just like not a side scroller because it was a 3D, but it was super old, like fighting game.
Hmm.
But I used to like read through the books because when you used to buy video games, they used to come with a book, like
You read
descriptions
those.
were
I'm impressed.
dude, the descriptions of every character, the story of why the characters were in the Battle Arena Toshinden, like and just from that point on, I kind of got into gaming for a while, and Baldur's Gate was my gateway into D&D. So
Nice.
Austin had played a little bit before, but really Baldur's Gate was what kind of pushed us into really doing this. And actually, I have a Lord of the Rings question for you because Chris mentioned this to me the other day, from the movies. It's one of the things Theoden said, that he says, "Where was Gondor when the Westfold fell?" I don't know where Gondor was. I want to know why Gondor was not helping Theoden, or was not helping when the Westfold fell.
You want to know what, dog? I am the worst person to ask that question of. No, I'm embarrassed that the very first Tolkien question out the gate is one that I don't know how to answer. But that the Legendarium is deep and vast. It goes wide in both directions, up, down, side to side, and I've never endeavored to find out. Chris, next question. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
just kidding.
No, because
No,
there's. Oh, go ahead.
Theoden. I'm going to answer your question indirectly.
Okay.
So, Denethor II, if you read the books, by the way, you may be able to call me on Sam. How do you know that? Because you've only read in the first couple of chapters of the Lord of the Rings: Two Towers. But as I stated previously, my girlfriend, Tolkien scholar, I listen to everything she says because she's smart. uh, and it was some of her contemporaries that expanded previously that Denethor II, the steward of Gondor in the absence of a king, actually did a reasonably decent job at heralding the needs of Minas Tirith, if not the rest of the like the kingdoms of, or the kingdom of Gondor.
Denethor
And
the second, he's the one who was overseeing Gondor in the movies.
he was holding office in Minas Tirith. He's Boromir's dad, Faramir's dad. He's the guy everybody
Okay.
knows is eating a tomato very grossly and quite frankly
Yes.
just not doing a great job. That's why he's a much better actor in Fringe, although he is a good actor in Lord of the Rings. We just prefer his Fringe character, whose name I'm failing to remember at the moment. But in the books, when Gandalf and Pippin show up, he's ready to go. Um, I don't know the specifics, but as opposed to Denethor being in mourning at the loss of his son Boromir and really just wanting nothing to do with this conflict of the last alliance of men and elves against the dark forces of Sauron, he's super down to go. And as it turns out, in my understanding, which could be wrong, if there's anybody in the chat who wants to call me on this, please do so because we'll learn at the same time. What happened with the individuals out in Rohan and the rest of Eorlingas. I was trying to figure out exactly. It's Eorlingas. All the persons out there. It's really more of a matter of like clan pride that gives cause for them to avoid calling for aid and then accepting aid when it's offered. And the same is
Okay.
true of the individuals in Gondor, Minas Tirith. Although they do have like conflicts from time to time, they are still like allies, especially against the Shadow. And as such, it, from what I understand, they were just busy. I don't know, man.
So that
listen,
is the
listen,
the
I
the official answer. They were just busy. That's what
they were just
happened.
busy, you know. Sometimes you're at work and you look at that message and you say, "I'm on something right now, and I'm going to get to that when I have a moment." And then unfortunately, the day goes by and you didn't respond to the question. You have to do it the next day. That's where Gondor was when the Westfold fell. They
Good.
left him
Well,
on
I'm
red.
I'm glad we got it cleared up then.
If anybody clips that and sends it to my partner, you have to know who my partner is. I'm not gonna shout her out here. Um, that will lead to an interesting conversation at my house this weekend.
Well, I hope that happens then. Um,
Excellent. No, let's line these up. Let's get me in trouble. Let's have
yeah.
more Lord of the Rings questions. Oh man, no, this is wonderful because I came out the gate saying, you know what I really loved about, my gateway to fantasy was Tolkien's works. It's like, oh, here's a Tolkien question. Nope, sorry, dog, can't handle it. I
um,
do want to ask though.
sure.
So Baldur's Gate 3 was your
Yes.
primary. Like, let's get into this as it should be. Baldur's Gate 3, when you compare it to the original games, has a lot more going for it, especially for those who lean into the mechanics that were provided by 5e, with Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 having come out over a decade ago, leaning into the previous editions.
Were one and
What
two turn based also the same way three is?
Yes, and it
Okay.
was a little bit more like not directly adjacent to a Final Fantasy style, line them all up and face each other sort of turn-based, but very similar turn-based format. Here's my dog Merlin jumping on the bed. You might not have seen it in the framing, uh, but my first exposure to D&D, funnily enough, referencing these video games, was actually, without me knowing it, Star Wars: Knights of the Old Republic, because those were based on, I want to say, second or third editions SRD. All the game mechanics that went into KOTOR 1 and 2 were Dungeons and Dragons based. So even though you didn't see the dice roll on the screen, it was a turn-based battle system that you can either activate in full or leave off, and it was passive turn-based using a variety of mechanics I didn't understand when I first played them 10 plus years ago. Uh, but when I heard eventually that those were inspired by D&D and advanced AD&D, or advanced AD&D is like saying ATM machine. But when I played those games, heard they were D&D inspired, I checked out Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, and like a lot of people who try to read the Silmarillion, I saw that shout out in the chat. uh, it took a few times for me to get into it, kind of like you play Diablos 2, 3, 4, and then you say, I want to see where it all started, and you try Diablo 1, you can't sprint, you just walk the whole time. It's tough to get into. Like,
Yeah.
all of these games are a great way to realize, oh, damn, what if I did this, but I had a cool DM who let me do stuff that the video game won't let me do?
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, one of the reasons that I wanted to try Baldur's Gate was and I love Skyrim and The Witcher, and I mean those are like probably my two favorites. The whole open world
Big time.
concept is awesome, but there's another game that's not as popular called XCOM. I don't know if you're familiar.
Yeah.
Dude, I
I'm
love
bad at it.
I so XCOM is a brutal turn-based game, especially when you put it like on Iron Man mode and turn the difficulty up. But
Yep.
the way that it plays is it's just like D&D combat, except with
Big
guns
time.
and you're fighting aliens. It's the same. You have movement speed, you can dash, you have an action and a bonus
Hmm.
action. It's like you said, you're not rolling, but it's like percentages to hit depending
Yep.
on where you are, if they're in cover, if they're not in cover. I don't even know how I stumbled upon that. That came out in like 2016, and I think I was just bored looking for a game to play. And I had never played a turn-based game like that before, and I don't think I even knew what it was until I started playing it, and I was like, "What the fuck is this?" Like I was used to,
Would have hooked you, huh?
yeah, and I was like, "Oh shit, this is
Yep.
kind of awesome." But I also loved obviously there's not as much of a like there is a story, but it's aliens are invading the Earth. That's like the gist of the story, basically.
Don't let Earth get blown up.
But
There's a lot going
yeah,
on there.
but I loved that the characters got perma killed. Like if you had a soldier that you were doing well with, and you leveled him up, and he got killed and that's it. That soldier's gone. Now you got to like I love the brutal aspect of that.
Yep.
Whereas like if Matt, who's also into big open world games, but he's also a first person shooter guy, and he
Hmm.
he doesn't get into that like the grind and strategy and that part of it the same way that I would.
And
As
I
far
lean
yeah,
more
go ahead.
towards your side of gaming. Yeah, I like strategy. I like story. So when you put Call of Duty, Fortnite, those games into my hands, they're real pretty. I'm bad at them.
Yeah, I actually Matt got me into playing Fortnite for a little while, and I was just I wouldn't play it by myself because I would just get murder killed every time. I would just get murked over and over and over. So I would only play if Matt would play with me because Matt is very good at those kind of games. But as far as Lord of the Rings games, did you play any of the Lord of the Rings games? Because I know I played a couple of them, and I don't remember the names.
The movie tie-in games were pretty decent, especially the ones that focused on the three hunters, if you will, Gimli, Legolas, and Aragorn. But since we're talking about turn-based combat games, my all-time favorite Lord of the Rings is Lord of the Rings: The Third Age. You play a company of heroes with sort of one-to-one comparison counterparts to the original Fellowship, following along in their footsteps on your own journey to assist in the fall of Sauron. And all these generic fantasy, but this guy's supposed to be like Gimli. This person's definitely supposed to be like Arwen.
Right.
They all have their own little interesting story. The turn-based mechanics and leveling up is pretty sick. As a matter of fact, the dwarven character at some point can literally like summon, I think, a fiery dragon. It was my favorite, and I'm really sad it's hard to play these days. The Third Age was the name of that game.
Okay, I'll have to check. I
Hmm.
actually just got Expedition 33 just because I was into the whole turn-based thing.
Yeah.
I haven't
Hmm.
started it yet because I'm still doing my Iron Man run on XCOM. But once I finish my Iron Man
Respect.
run, I'm gonna take some time and dig into that. And then shout out to
That
Matt again
one's
because he was actually the
yeah.
one that recommended that to me. Probably not that he played it, but he probably saw it was a cool looking turn-based game and sent it to
Yeah.
me and was like, "Yo, you'd like this? Check it out."
My coworker is constantly telling me that I have to play it. I'm sadly gonna have to tell her that right now I'm replaying Control, which is another video game for like the
I
second
don't know
time
that one.
instead of it's without me going down too far of a rabbit hole. Have you heard of Alan Wake? Alan Wake 2 was really popular in the last 2 years.
Mm-mm.
That's okay. What about Max Payne? Do you remember the Max Payne games back in the
Yes,
day?
Max Payne. I remember. Yes.
Okay. So those aren't part of Remedy Studios, but the original writers for Max Payne have a couple of games all falling under the Remedy Studio banner, and it's all sort of like a paranormal this world, but with spooky stuff going on, sort of an environment, not unlike Buffy, Supernatural, those types of shows. Alan Wake is about a writer, and he finds himself in like a Crater Lake equivalent in Oregon, and supernatural, crazy, spooky stuff starts happening, all having to do with him sort of maybe going insane, but it's actually the world going mad around him due to supernatural forces not related to his supernatural, but also crime centric books and Control in the same universe. follows a woman looking for her brother in the Federal Bureau of Control's home office, and when she goes in, she accidentally becomes the new like chief of the bureau. Very much like Tim Allen's the Santa Claus. You put on the suit, you become the Claus. She
Okay.
picks up the chief's gun, and then she becomes the new chief, and you gain superpowers. The guns are super interesting. And it's really fun, simple action mechanics with a compelling story. And they have a TTRPG that had a Kickstarter last year that was heavily inspired by Control that I can't remember the name of, but I can't wait to get it in the mail.
Yeah, Chris
But I'm
Chris is saying that game is super odd.
yeah, super odd, but very cool.
Yeah.
You your boss fights are against things like a refrigerator and the horse ride with the pole still attached from a merry-go-round. But it's as opposed to you fighting those actual creatures, it's like the supernatural entities who have like attached themselves to those creatures. When you find I think it's the fridge, maybe it's a toilet, I can't remember, but like you find a room where clearly security's gone and the one person who was in the room who their job rotating shifts is to stare at this object because if you ever don't look at it, that's when it starts to do bad things. And you roll up on it, and there's a lot of comedy in this game because it's like this person shouting for help through like a meeting room wall, like a containment space. And when you see what they're doing, they're like strapped to a chair and they're just staring at a refrigerator, and they're like, "Thank God, please come look at this fridge." And you're like, "Okay, yeah, I'm down." So instead of trying new video games like Clair Obscura Expedition 33, which I really want to play, I'm just gonna go fight like copy machines and toasters again.
Nice. Just cycle through the old roster and
Yeah, I do the same with audiobooks. I do a lot of comfort reading, most of which inspires my storytelling and dungeon master planning for D&D. What a fun
nice.
little segue! I'm practically a forever DM. In the last year, actually, is the most I've ever been a player character for a variety of different games. But I'm a big fan of a book series that has some problematic elements. I'm going to come out and say that, but what books that were begun right around the year 2000 aren't slightly problematic when you go back to the early editions? But series called the Dresden Files. I think it's 17 books strong now. It's urban fantasy,
Damn.
mostly surrounding a wizard private detective. And I'm running Tomb of Annihilation for some friends in Southern California. We have gone through a couple of the modules together. I actually have a tattoo on the back of my arm because we all finished Curse of Strahd over 3 years, playing every single week in person, which was pretty rad. And now that same group of people were trying Tomb of Annihilation. I gave them a brief overview of the story. We had sort of like one of those PowerPoint meetings where we decided which game we were going to play. Uh, the last contenders were Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frost Maiden, Wild Beyond the Witchlight, and Tomb of Annihilation. And I do different spins on each of these games, so it's not always directly out of the book once we get a hang for the core story. And this time around, inspired by the YouTube creator, if you haven't had a chance to see his work, Pointy Hat, who does like twists and variations on classic D&D mechanics and rules.
Okay.
He did a different lich variant for each D&D class. So like, hey, liches are just wizards. What about a druid lich, a cleric lich, which is kind of a mummy lore he goes into, but that's a whole other thing. But in Tomb of Annihilation, you're basically racing against the clock to stop a curse that's killing everybody on the planet, actually in every realm. If you've ever been to the material plane and you've died and been brought back, your soul's being stolen away by this curse. And it's all being held by a lich. And I said, well, none of my player characters decided to be a wizard, but Pointy Hat has a lich variant for each of them. So what if instead of just racing against the clock, they're racing these other liches who want to get all that soul energy for themselves?
Okay.
Um, so my comfort games led me to talking about my comfort reads, including the Dresden Files, all 17 books. When I'm running or driving, I just put these 17 books on in a row. And because of one book in particular, I think it's book 7 in the chronology. Now I have 6 liches. Yes, 6 liches going against my player characters who at this time are level 8. And if you put 6 level
Okay.
8 PCs against a single lich, they might have a fighting chance, assuming they prep appropriately. And they're racing 8 of them to go fight the big lich. So
Jesus.
uh, I'm sadistic and I love my friends.
So this is a home game now you're talking about?
Mhm.
And you were
Tis
you were
a home game.
sorry, you were saying Southern Cali, right?
Yep. So
So
sort of the opposite end of the country from y'all.
yeah, yeah, we're all so it's nice. We're all super like Chris is literally my next door neighbor. Like I
That's
said,
awesome.
we're a pretty tight knit group. So Chris is literally my next door neighbor. Matt is my little brother, and Austin, we grew up in the same town. I've known him since I was 5 years old. Like
Heck
we're
yeah.
the four of us are all pretty tight. When we started, not even when we started playing, because we only started playing D&D like a year and a half ish ago. It literally
And
on
you
my
obviously love it for putting in this work.
yeah,
Yeah. Go ahead. Cut you
on
off.
my yeah, like literally the first session was me, Austin, and Chris with a piece of loose leaf paper like on my dining room table, and I had just kind of scribbled out tables where there was like vendors and goblins, and the session lasted like 2 hours, and they Chris
Nice.
shut up. um and so when we decided to do this, we were all like, well, who's gonna run it, this and that, and I was like just googling like how this works, and what does a
Hmm.
dungeon master do, and blah blah blah. And I like writing. I like even just with music stuff, like I enjoy writing songs. I enjoy actually physically writing. Like I like writing stories. So like I can fucking do this. Like I'll do it. Dude, they
Yeah.
burned right through that whole session. They killed the boss in like 3 turns, and I was like, okay, shit, I got to think about this a little bit more. Like I was thinking too much about the scenario and the like what was happening in the story, which obviously is super important, but I didn't put enough thought into like, okay, these guys are. I think I started them at level 3, and I was like, okay, there's 3 guys at level 3, and I didn't really look into challenge ratings or anything like that, and I had them fight this like
Hmm.
centaur kind of thing, and they wiped it out in like 4 turns, and it didn't do any damage to them. I mean we had a lot of fun. Like we hung out, we
Yeah.
drank some beverages, we ate some snacks, and we were like, shit, this was really fun. Like okay, let's. And then
And that's what
after,
matters, man.
yeah, and
Hmm.
like I said, we're me, Chris, and Austin. We're in like our mid to late 30s. We have kids, we have jobs, we have houses, we have mortgages. We're all married. Like there's plenty of other real life shit going on all the all the time. So just carving out the time to hang out, and like Matt, I was like kind of on the fence whether or not Matt was gonna actually like this or think it was stupid, and he like dove head first into it as soon as we like sees.
Yes.
The first session was me, Chris, and Austin literally at the table, and then the second session I told Matt like just come over, like buy a set of dice. Like we bought a $3 set of dice off of Amazon, and he came, and then that was it. Like once he got like his character, and forget it, it was just kind of off to the races. But so we don't have a forever DM. We rotate. So I ran our first session. Austin did our which lasted about 6 to 7 months. Austin ran our second campaign, which was same thing, 7 to 8 ish months. And then
Nice.
as Austin's campaign was like winding down, we are getting towards the end. Matt kept saying like, "Yo, let's just stream it. Let's stream it on Twitch." And it's like I barely knew what Twitch was. I was like, "Don't you people just watch video games on that?" He's like, "Yeah, but people watch D&D on it too." Like I've been looking at. And Austin knew about Critical Role, and as soon as we mentioned that, Austin was like, "No, well, we can do this." And we're like, "Ah, fuck it. Like let's try it." And then once we started doing it, it was like, okay, well, we're either gonna do it or we're not gonna do it. Like if we're
Yep.
gonna do it, we're gonna try to make it like we're not gonna be Critical Role but our whole thing has always been like there's so many streams, there's so many podcasts, there's so many live plays. We're like we want ours to feel like Critical Role is amazing and they're incredible and they're all professionals and whatever, but like it's you can tell it's a performance. We want it to feel like you are hanging out in the basement with us, like playing
Yep.
D&D. Like that was our whole shtick or vibe or whatever. We're like, we want it to feel like you're like the way that we set up the cameras and the board and the way we're everything. We want it to feel like you're just hanging out, playing with us. Which, like you said, it's as long as you're like hanging out and having fun and like you can kind of disassociate from whatever shit is going on in your real life. Like I think that's why so many and I had no idea the community was this huge. Like from the beginning, like when we said it, we're like, all right, well, we're gonna make an Instagram. Okay, so me and we put together an Instagram and like we made a post and blah blah blah. And so like I play in a band too, and I ran my band's Instagram for a while, and it's not nothing. It's a decent amount of work like running a page like that.
Big
But
time.
it's been so much fun doing the Instagram stuff and like learning how to do it and make reels and all this shit. And
All those
it's
things.
yeah, but it's
You
one of
guys
the
are
other
getting good at it.
we're
Yeah.
we're working on it. One of the other things I wanted to ask you. So we've interacted
Mhm.
with Judah from One Shot D&D. Shout out Judah, if
Yeah.
he's listening. Judah's awesome. We did a one shot with him, and during he calls it the second wind, where he does kind of like a summary of how the one shot went and different feedback. And he asked us if you could characterize yourself as a D&D class, what would you say that yourself what would you fall into? And I was like, oh shit, that's kind of a cool question. So I'm gonna lay that out to you. Like, if you had to pick a class for yourself that you think you would fit the most into.
Well, this is a tough question to answer. So, in real life, when I get to be a player character, I commonly find myself playing the bruiser classes, the warrior role. So your barbarian, your fighter, etc. And the reason that I do that is because when I have the rare opportunity to play as a player character, it's jumping in with a bunch of people who are so excited, and they usually have a concept already for like a sorcerer or a combined like I want to be a cleric warlock. No, hear me out. This is why it works. And people who are just like so amped. And I am huge on story. I love character development, but I also love my friends and the people that I play with to the extent that I want to hold them up and build them up. And that's usually why I find myself as a dungeon master so frequently. So I fill the gap that will allow for them to be able to take on whatever role it is that they want to excel in. And as a
Nice.
result of that mentality, where I think I would hang, you might think cleric as a result of everything I just said, the ultimate support. But combined with my love of nature, there's a little pine tree in the middle of this hat, which is the best running hat I've ever found in my life, and that's why I wear it constantly now that I'm finally going bald. But uh, love of nature, support. I have to say it's an even split between druid and bard. Now, bards aren't necessarily like huge into nature necessarily, necessarily, at least not how they're written in the books. But I am an orator by trade. I do a lot of speaking in my work. I am sort of in a marketing and medical device testing, clinical training environment in my day to day. So I do a lot of speaking, interfacing with
Okay.
persons. I was a former theater kid. I tried singing in a band for a little bit. So Bard makes sense just because I do use my force of personality, and knowing how to interact with people is very big in marketing. It's not just sales, it's not just advertising. So Bard is a natural answer, but because I genuinely feel in my soul like a sense of wanting to support those around me while also loving nature and animals, Druid makes the most sense. Because if you work hard enough at it, you can heal while shooting lightning, then turning into a bear. And if I can do all of that for my players slash my friends, then I think that sounds a lot like the real life versions of things that I do for the people around me constantly.
Nice. That's awesome. That's a good answer, dude. I like that.
Yeah.
And Bard
What
Druid.
about you?
That's a cool
Hmm.
combo. So for me,
I would do that. I'm gonna try that now. All right, go ahead.
so the answer that I gave Judah, which I thought about it too afterwards, and I was like, no, that was the right answer. So kind of similar, a little bit similar to what you were saying, but mine would be more fighter bard. So for me, it's
Nice,
more the way that I support people. I like being out in front. I work in the pharmaceutical space too. I work in sales. I work for
nice.
a contract, research and development company. So I'm constantly talking to people. I'm constantly out in front. Like I am the early stage of the sales process. I'm the person who's knocking on the door and calling and speaking to you, and then kind of once there's some kind of interest, I pass you on to the actual scientists and subject matter experts that can walk
Sounds
you
very
through the
familiar to my job. We'll talk about that after the stream. Yeah.
yeah, that can walk you through. Like I said, I was an English major. There's very little science in my background other than I've been in the industry now for 5-ish years, 5, 6 years. So I know the terminology. I don't know necessarily what it means or how it works, but I can walk through the introductory part of how the conversation would go. But as
Just
far
because
as
you
the
can say prestidigitation doesn't mean you have to know how it works. I get it.
I guess chromatography and forget it. But so that would go with more the Bard side. But as far as a fighter, like I played football my whole life. I played ball in college. I was slash kind of is an amateur boxer. So I do like the physical aspect of being and testing myself physically, and
Oh
so
yeah.
that part to me always appealed of being, if there was anything that happened and I want to be out in front. I want to be forward facing, whether it is speaking, dealing with people directly, if it is in a physical kind of situation where it's okay, like I'm going to test my body against somebody else, and we're going to find out what happens one way or another. So,
Heck
but like
yeah.
I said, I've sang and played guitar in bands since I was 16, 17 years old. So it's all that kind of mixed together, fighter bard for me feels feels like that would be the right answer.
It makes a
And
ton of sense. Yeah.
but and like I said, I know Austin and Matt and Chris so well, and it's I would be interested to see what their answers were, and I know what I knew what Austin's answer was gonna be when Judah before Austin responded, and I would have known that because he picked Barbarian, and I was
Yep.
like, yeah, that's so. I played ball with Austin my whole life too. Like we went to the same college together, played football together. Austin was an interior lineman, so like he's a big strong dude. Like Barbarian for
Nice.
Austin makes sense.
It makes a ton of sense.
It
Yeah.
makes yeah
Defender. I think a lot of monks would be special offensive players. Linemen are most undoubtedly going to be fighters or barbarians, but
yeah
linebackers for sure barbarian. Yeah,
yeah no and
makes
I
so much
was
sense.
yeah so forget forget it. But for me, fighter bard, which now going like when I'm thinking about another and Chris. I do. Chris would actually probably be the hardest one to put into a category. He's just saying that I that I don't that we don't know him. Um,
I'm gonna paint him into a corner since I know he's a minis painter, and I'm actually gonna throw Artificer his way. Because it sounds like he did a little bit of the tech work, he's done a little bit of the artwork, and
that's actually
it,
a good answer for Chris.
what you know one of my favorite things about Artificers, and I can't wait to see how they expand on this in the forthcoming book. Actually, I don't remember what it's called, but the new Eberron book that comes out soon. Uh, Artificers intrigue me because the way that they're coded in Dungeons and Dragons, in particular, even though they're found in lore all across a variety of different mythologies in one way, shape, or form, but in Dungeons and Dragons in particular, they're like, anybody can read a book and become a wizard if they try hard enough. But I say, screw that. I'm gonna force magic into this like rubber duck, and I'm gonna prove that you don't need to learn and memorize that shit. Uh, and the people who are like, no, I can turn like my fixation and crafting into cooler magic than the actual casters have. They got my vote. So when I say artificer for Chris, I mean it very cool. Like,
You know, and Chris is probably the most handy out of the four of us too. So I mean, this
there
is
you go.
another rabbit hole that we could go down, but just to give the quick and dirty of it, I had so again, Chris is my next door neighbor. Our neighbor across the street from me drove his Denali into my kitchen like 6 months ago.
Oh, nice.
So big,
Yeah,
huge
love that for
hole in
you.
my house, whatever.
Right in
So
the holiday season.
I'm fighting. Yeah, dude. I'm fighting with the town right now just to get all the construction back or whatever. So one of the things that we have to do is we have to put this sign because we're appealing because they denied our first plans or whatever. But we have to put a sign on our front lawn that basically says there will be a public hearing at the town hall this date, whatever. All they give you is this big sticker, and then they say, okay, well you need to make a sign and you need to get that sign like posted into your front lawn and this and that. And I'm not a handy person. Like I'm not. You give me a hammer, tell me to swing it, I'll swing it all fucking day long. But so I called, of course, Chris and Austin, and I was like, Austin, like, come help me make this sign. He was like, all right, well, I got my kids today. I was like, cool, bring them over. My wife watched so my wife watched five of our combined children while me and
What a good
Austin,
soul.
yeah, while me and Austin it's not a good
Did
sign.
your
I'll just
best.
I'll just say it is that. But Chris he had him being next door. He has tools. We so again, just to run off real quick, Barbarian Austin. So we were starting
Yep.
to hammer the post. Chris had actually had this nice mallet that was working perfect. I was knocking the first post in. I told Austin, I was like, all right, you take over for a little bit. Austin took one swing with the mallet. Mallet splits in half, goes flying. I
Yeah.
was like, he's like, oh, I can't believe that happened. I was like, bro, I can absolutely believe that happened. You're a
You're not supposed to
fucking,
go into a rage for home
right.
construction, man.
And it was just, I was like, this, I can 100%. To me, like, this makes sense. Like, just knocking the post in, cool. Austin grabs it and just fucking, and the mallet is gone. We ended up duct taping it together But that was just another way to tie in. Like you said, Chris was the handy one, has all the tools. Like we would, I think he had people over his house. Yeah, he does. I mean, it's a pretty sorry looking sign. He's not saying in the chat, but he is the one that if he wasn't like entertaining people at his house, like I would have asked him like, "Yo, how should we do this?" Not like he was like, "Listen, I'm gonna open the garage." He's like, "Anything you guys need, go ahead and grab it." And me and Austin were like, "Okay, hammers, wood, we'll just smash them into the
What
ground."
else do you
Well,
need? Yeah.
and it was a pain in the ass. And it's
So you're one of those people when you have to hang something on the wall, you don't drill out the hole and use anchors first, do you? You just zap it right in.
100%, 100%.
Nice.
Thumbtacks
Hmm.
everywhere, tape. Forget it. Unless my wife is she's from like the country, like middle of upstate New York, teeny tiny town, like cows and
So she
cornfields.
knows what she's doing.
Yes, she mows our lawn. She enjoys mowing the lawn. Like I've told her, like I'll do it. Like I don't want to, but like I will.
That's
And
her time. Yeah,
she said she likes it. You get a little exercise. She enjoys doing it. And I was like, okay, cool. Like I'm okay with it. Like if you like doing it, I have no problems with that.
just,
But I just
really twisting the arm. Yeah.
yeah. So right now, so another thing I wanted to ask is, so you've been playing D&D in general? It's for a while, correct?
Coming up on a decade. Yeah.
Okay. So with me,
Yep.
Austin, Chris, all of us are still like just scratching the surface of all this. So what would your best advice be for, not only for new players, but since me, Austin, and Chris we rotate as DMs, what would be you'd say best advice for new DMs?
Honestly, I actually just did an Instagram post about this a little while back. I was having a conversation with James at Tabletop Misfits, one of the persons I work with online, and it was true about 10 years ago when I started DMing. It's true now. No matter how much prep you do, follow the fun that the players are intrigued with. And this is somebody, by the way, we talked about in this conversation how much I love story, character development. I really lean hard into like the crazy lore that I can come up with. I'm a Tolkien fan, even though I haven't read all the books.
Yeah.
So of course I love like over developing stories to some degree or another. But because oh, and by the way, this is a crappy version because it's been in my wallet for some time, but I am an instructional and occasionally DM for hire dungeon master, so I do have my
Nice.
little business card. It reads finishes most one shots in 2 to 4 sessions because that's how I roll. And the mentality behind finishes most one shots in 2 to 4 sessions is uh, like you stated earlier, a lot of us have kids, most of us are married. We have jobs that are either straining or even if we love them, they still take a lot out of us. And as a
Yeah.
result of that, when we all get together with the very rare time we have to hang out, whether it's Dungeons and Dragons or something else, that time should be as enjoyable as possible. I don't necessarily support having like a full hour and a half of okay, this is our only time to do D&D and we agreed to do D&D, let's just do bits the whole time. Like as a dungeon master I do got to rein it in every now and then,
Yeah.
but if I'm hinting pretty heavily at nope, I did 3 hours of prep on like path A, I really need you to go down path A, and they're very insistent on well you hinted at this really cool sounding thing and like paths B through D, follow B through D. All that work you did for one storyline will be there for the next time you all get together. If everybody who are just as tired as you probably are, despite how hyped you are to be around each other, want to follow one thread in particular, follow that thread with them. If you're a crafty enough dungeon master, once you've had some preparation, you can take all that prep you did and pick some stuff up and drop it in that direction as
Somewhere
well
else.
without
Yeah.
it seeming like a railroad. But yeah, follow the fun is my best advice for new dungeon masters. And it also really helps with your improv skills. The more you say no, the less your players will want to experiment. So if you say, how about some hot dogs? And they go, we're only having hamburgers tonight. Be like, okay, well, this hamburger is a little bit long and only open on one side. Like, lean into it. Like, don't. I see you, Chris. Yeah,
Yeah.
don't abandon everything you've worked for, but follow the fun is my best advice for new and current dungeon masters who just need a refresher. Because my not unlike all of you who are dungeon mastering for the first time in the last year, the first campaign I did out the gate from the books before I started adapting modules and coming up with my own stuff was Curse of Strahd, which a lot of people think is the best fifth edition module if you want to run one that's pre-written. but it was like the first big sandbox, and I read that thing like cover to cover 3 or 4 times. And even though I did that before I started DMing, I would have to refresh, like, this is a huge ass map. Like, what's over here? What's over here? They're walking in this direction. I need to prep these 3 things. And then they'd be like, well, we have 2 druids in the party. We're going to dig a hole and see if we can skip over to here. And I was like, okay, I guess I have to come up with this crazy subterranean network that would make sense in D&D Transylvania. And we had like 5 really sick sessions about them exploring like a spookier version of the Underdark. If you remember that really cool sequence in Act 1 of Baldur's Gate 3,
Yes.
because they really insisted on going underground, and there's nothing for that in the book. And we all came up with it together. And you better believe there's like an old abandoned dwarven, fully metal made dragon down there. Yeah, and
Nice.
the warlock who can shoot eldritch blasts from 3.5 miles away, just taking pot shots at this dragon while everybody runs away. It was a great time. Uh, I go on tangents quite a lot, and that leans once again into the finishes most one shots in 2 to 4 sessions
Nice.
aesthetic. If I had to synthesize it, follow the fun. That's my best advice.
No, I love that. That's, I mean, I'm excited to DM again just because like I did my whole session and I was able to take things of that, like, okay, this worked, okay, this didn't work, like, okay, I probably over prepped that time and I under prepped this time. But then I got to see Austin DM and it's like, okay, that was cool. I liked how Austin did that. And it's like, I probably would have done this a little different. Now I'm getting to see Chris do it too, the whole thing. And all right, so Chris just mentioned something from our last session that, as a more seasoned DM, I want to hear how you can handle it, how you would have handled this. So basically, our
Uh,
party, we dropped down into a sewer. So our current campaign actually takes place in Baldur's Gate. So we dropped down into the
I
sewers
saw that.
under
Yeah.
Baldur's Gate, um, and basically opened into this corridor that had like circular with different doors, and we knew that the first door on the right, or the first hallway to the right, like, okay, well, that's where we have to go, but it was caved in. So me being a sorcerer and all, like, me and Austin were like, okay, well, why don't Mike, can Dangar, can you cast gaseous form on all of us and we can like kind of see, make our through the seams of the rocks? And I was like, shit, yeah, I can. And Chris's answer was, no, you cannot do that. The rocks are airtight. You can't do it. And we were like, I think we could try to do it. What would be your
So
response to that?
earlier, you were hyping up Critical Role. Without Critical Role, we probably wouldn't have as popular of a game of Dungeons and Dragons that we have today. A lot of
For
people like
sure.
us seem to want to emulate Griffin McElroy of Adventure Zone. People want to be like Brennan Lee Mulligan. I think it's great to learn from and take a lot of practices and skills from a variety of dungeon masters that you get to either see play with you at the table, or that you get to engage with by way of watching media online. And as a result of that, I respect the decisions of every single dungeon master, and I try most of the time to not be a rules lawyer at the table for what should work. However, you should absolutely be able to get through rubble with gaseous form.
Yes.
What the hell, man? Have you never had an inspirational speaker or a teacher do that whole thing where they have a jar and they're like, I'm gonna fill it full of big rocks. Is it full? And all the students are supposed to say, yeah. And then you pour smaller rocks and then eventually sand and then water, because there's always like a smaller gap that you can fill up with other things. And it's a whole allegory about how you spend your time. Like, gas gets through solid. I don't know what to tell you. If I had to guess, and Chris is in the chat, it looks like to be
Dude,
able to confirm, he probably
he's got steam coming out of his ears right now.
he has gaseous forms coming out of his head at the
Yeah.
moment. Yeah. Uh, if I had to guess, he didn't plan too much further than what was on the other side of that rubble, and and wanted to slow y'all down to end some cool shit at the end of the session on wherever the other equivalent of the other side of that rubble was, and was panicked to jump straight to it, and then have to have things go further than that in the session, which can be especially tough, I will say, on streams, because when you're playing in a home game and it's not a stream, which I will say I love your guys' hook, because it really does feel like you're at the table with you all just hanging out, and
I
that's a good thing.
appreciate that, man. That's the goal.
You're hitting the nail on the head, and it's great. I caught up as soon as you and I had a conversation to hang out. I went, wow, I can't wait for this. I have not had time to check out their stream yet, and so you better believe I started smashing your guys' content over the last week. But
Nice, nice.
uh, I will say, not having dungeon mastered on a stream, but having watched a couple of streams with friends and now having been on a couple recently, it's tough to maintain pacing that you would at a table on a stream where it's kind of like, oh, hey, you guys crushed it. Give me, like, if you don't mind, 5 minutes just to like read some notes. You guys can
Yeah,
strategize. You can like take a quick bio break. When you're on a stream and you're like trying not to take that many breaks and keep it interesting for the crowd,
yeah.
it's kind of so I don't blame Chris. But come on, you got to reward the advice piece number two, because I don't know, maybe advice number one is to encourage the players to be creative, because follow the fun is a good instance of that, and don't yes and everything because then you'll break the game. There won't be consequences, but you got to reward creative decisions, because then you find yourself playing like a hack and slash or a turn-based RPG video game where they limit the things you're able to do with the actions that you have. If gaseous form only gets you like to the other side of a fight, then you have other things you can use your action economy for. You're not going to use gaseous form, but if you can use that shit to like bypass a structure, hell yeah. I think I can't remember if it was campaign 2 or campaign 3 of Critical Role, but there was an instance, I believe, if it was either Critical Role or Dimension 20, where they had a creative resolution to a situation, whether it was like they successfully talked their way out of a fight or they bypassed a puzzle in a way that the DM wasn't thinking of, whichever of these two famous dungeon masters. And on stream, they literally picked up a couple sheets of paper, wadded it up, and said, "Okay." Like there goes all of that, and the players going, "Oh my god, we're so sorry." And it's like, "No, no, this is how it should be."
Yeah. No, for sure. And you can see Chris is good. So we understood
Some
why,
epic
because
fight. Yeah.
we did fight a really cool sewer monster like right after that happened.
Chris, hear me
Which
out. That sewer monster right on the other side of the rubble, my guy. And then he just used a higher level spell slot 3 times. He doesn't have that, and the fight's that much harder.
wait, the
the,
boat fight in
the
campaign
boat
2.
fight in campaign 2. The boat fight in campaign 2. They were on a ship a couple of times. Ah. I've been meaning to re-listen to Campaign 2 the same way I've been meaning to do a lot of new stuff, like play Clair Obscura Expedition 33. So I don't know if when I'll actually visit the Mighty Nine again, but now I need to know because I referenced it and because you identified where I can look for it. It's only 360 to 400 hours of content I got to go through.
All right, so I'm gonna scroll back up in the chat a little bit because I did catch that
Yeah.
Matt wants to know how many sets of dice you own because Matt is our
Oh,
dice goblin.
your little brother is doing things right then and making strong financial decisions. I say that about him because I have to convince myself that I'm the same. I'm looking at 16 just on my display shelf. And when I say display shelf, they're not like nice and organized. It's just like where all the display
Where
worthy
they
dice are stacked. I'm looking at 16 quickly counted sets just right there to my right. Are two different Crown Royal bags that are one's completely full of D20s, the other is all the other dice that those dice sets came from. And then there's a second Crown Royal bag for all the other dice. And that was part of a bartending thing I came up with recently where people were figuring out what different shots of alcoholic cider they were going to get based on rolling D20s. So I needed all D20s separated. By the way, everybody who's listening, don't ask me yes or no questions. That wasn't what I was asked just now. I was asked a numerical question. Nobody wants me just to say a number and then move on. That's not interesting. But you will find that I never answer a question in a short way when I can easily draw it out into a much longer story. I would guess realistically about 50 sets.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's way more than me. I think I have 8 sets, something like that. Matt, drop it in the chat. How many sets do you have now? I don't know if he has 50, but he definitely has more
It,
than I do. But
I'll tell you
he's
what, I
also
have
a
too many. I haven't used all of them by far. Like at a certain point when you're like Matt and I just assume Matt is like me, even if he doesn't have the numbers, you stop buying dice for functional purposes. And you absolutely just keep buying them because you don't have any that look like that yet. Also, you buy some that already look like that, but these ones are slightly different. And they're investments. You have to look at his suitcase. Oh
yeah.
man.
So
Nice.
Matt also like just talking about collection stuff. So Matt
Mhm.
is a huge Lego head. His
Yeah,
entire apartment is covered. Like I always tell him like,
as it
yo,
should be.
whenever you move out, whenever you go get a new place, I'm like, what are you gonna do with all this? He's like, I'm gonna take it with me. Like, dude, unless you're buying a house next at 26 years old, like You're not. Like you're just not.
If he can dream it, he'll believe it. All you guys need to do is become incredibly successful between now and when he has to move, so that he
Yeah.
can finance such an endeavor. And by that time, he will have purchased at least $2,000 more worth of Legos and at least another 5 to 10 sets of dice. So he'll need that room. It's sort of a gambler's fallacy, where it's like, well, it's been bad luck all this time. It's got to be good luck at
Yeah.
some point. No, no, no. If I keep buying things, I'll eventually get the house to fit it all. Just get after it, my guy.
Look at
Most of
Matt.
this is sarcastic, by the way. I'm watching the chat. Yeah, no. Please, nobody cite me in Gambler's Addiction or like Shopper's Addiction Anonymous meetings as being an enabler.
Oh, dude, forget it.
Yeah.
He's probably on his phone right now buying other dice as we're talking about buying more dice.
They're in a different room right now. If I had to show any off on stream right now, which it's not my best camera, so it wouldn't be worth it anyway, I have a tattoo on my leg that incorporates my Mediterranean olive wood dice. And my Mediterranean olive wood dice purchased from Texas-based Artisan Dice. Not a sponsor. I just like those guys. They're by far my most expensive dice. I won't. No, I think I actually doesn't matter. And I never used them because of how expensive they were. So don't do
It's
that. I'll go
it's
ahead
a
and say if
it's a just to have them kind of thing.
big time,
Yeah.
because then I couldn't spend thousands of dollars on the tattoo that also included their visage.
Yeah, I get that. It's so I have a bunch of tattoos too. But I don't have anything that has anything to do with D&D yet. So we'll see
Yeah.
if that. And yeah, yeah. If that's my whole back is like unfinished right now, so I have to get my back done before I do anything else. But
So so real quick about me, sort of prompted by that, I read fantasy books, watched fantasy movies, same with science fiction and video games all throughout my youth into my 20s. But I was a football player, a weightlifter, and a long distance runner at the same time. So I've always looked like somebody who probably wouldn't be too into Dungeons and Dragons until everybody got into Dungeons and Dragons once Stranger Things and Critical Role made it popular. But one really fun fact is I got a couple of like tree and mountain tattoos, and I was working at a running shoe store while I was finishing college. I was in college for exactly 1 year longer than Van Wilder of National Lampoon's Van Wilder, so I was in school for a long time. And I athletic as hell. I was playing video games the whole time. I've played Skyrim on probably like 9 different consoles at this point, and I just can't stop. But the campaign that I have with Tomb of Annihilation, we've been playing it for 2 years now, and it's going on as long as it is because I keep changing the story. Not like going back on decisions, but adding in extra stuff so that they can get to higher levels and like
yeah,
augmenting the challenges so it's more worthwhile in the end. I did the same thing with Curse of Strahd. Together, I've been playing with these people for 8 to 9 years of the 10 years I've been playing this game. We have the
that's
matching
awesome.
Strahd tattoo on the back of our arm. And my favorite part about this group is 7 out of the 8 of us worked at a running shoe store together. And we all definitely look like we would work at a running shoe store. And it's just kind of like, these guys, these are the ones who like send their dungeon master Sam like 3.5 like full small print pages of like character backstory with openings for him to use to like add stuff in. Oh man. Unsolicited advice number 3. When creating a character, it's a real boon to your dungeon master to be like, I don't know what happened to my cousin, as opposed to being like, my cousin is the secret king of this country and wants me to take over. It's kind of like, nah, don't write your ending. Like, give a couple of interesting hooks. And
Yeah,
you and the dungeon master are telling a story together. So by all means, like flesh some things out together before you do a reveal in a session, kind of like seek permission from them to take artistic liberties. Like, don't just make decisions for your player. But I have to recommend for most players, for the benefit of their dungeon master, have fun with the not knowing where your character's history is going, by writing those classic, we're gonna do them like, I have a tragic backstory where my parents were killed, but secretly. It's like, nah, don't do the but secretly. Like, let
yeah,
let the dungeon master reveal some interesting stuff for you. And I bring all that up not as a rule, like do what you will at your tables. I find it more fun that way, both from the player and the DM perspective, to not fully know what's going to happen, and have that be something that we work on and do together at the table. But I bring that up in this instance because the people I want to continuously emphasize is not having ever played a game of a game of D&D in their life when I came to them with the proposition to dungeon master for them for the first time. All of them were like college athletes, trained to be like firefighters. That's one of my really good buddies. All these people who had nerdism in them, they just hadn't really expressed it yet at that point, and went full dork in the best way possible over the last 7 years, 9 years. It's
Yeah,
great. I love it.
dude, that's me, Austin, and like that me, Austin, and Matt. Like Matt was a quarterback, I was a tight end, Austin was a guard. Like our whole
Oh
like
yeah,
we've all coached football, played football. Matt played football and basketball.
nice.
Like Austin was a big like lifter. Like, but I mean, we all were playing ball in college. But he'll give me shit
Nice.
if I don't say that. Yeah, Austin did lift more than me. He was a guard and I was a tight end. He was supposed to lift more than
Austin
me.
lives heavy. It's awesome.
But
Yeah. I'll pump him up. Why not, dude? I used to be in the locker room. I get it. I'm small now, but I was a linebacker.
but yeah, no, we're very similar. Like it's always like if when we were walking around the he beat me in a 40-yard dash one time by .01 seconds, and I have never
And he never let
heard
it go. Yep.
never.
He's a glory hand. I get it.
Oh, forget it. But like to your point, and like I'm covered in like I have lions and warriors and stuff, and I have all weapons and stuff on my back, and Austin's got tattoos too. Matt has a Cerberus dog on his chest. Like just
Nice.
if we're just walking around like the way that you would think about D&D 20, 30 years ago or whatever, where you'd think it would just be, however you would want to classify it. It's like you said, it's opened up so much to everybody, and that's again, that's part of what's been so cool about well, you were a quarterback, Matt. You didn't need to run under a 5. But but that's what's been
Ideally, you don't have
so
to run that far. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
what's been so cool about all this is just all these different types of people that we've gotten to meet. And we've been, like I said, we did a one shot with Judah, who's in Australia, and we've done a couple other interviews since then. We talked with Coffee and D&D. They're out in the country in, in Montana, and they have their podcast. And we've met some local people too, like both of our sponsors, Legendary Realms Terrain and WizardWorks Gaming. They're both local. Like Dylan from WizardWorks was in one of our sessions in person. Like came
Yeah, I saw
down
that. That's
came
rad.
down to Chris's house. Like we hung out. It was a blast. To me, that was like one of the most fun sessions that we did. In this campaign was and it definitely helped that Dylan is a more tenured D&D player. So like he came in with his wizard and knew all his spells, and he was almost played like a support wizard, which was really kind of cool because our most of
Hmm.
our characters are all pretty combat based. um, but it was a lot of fun, and like he kind of helped me with because I'm a spellcaster too. I'm a sorcerer, so he kind of like gave me a couple little like tips of different ways to use a sorcerer. And I was like,
That sounds
okay, this
exactly
is.
like what a wizard would do for a sorcerer. The book smart versus street smart. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Or I would come in, I wanted fireball everything. But one of the cool things about Chris's campaign too is he wanted it to be like we're running a heist campaign. So he was like,
Yeah.
your characters can't be lawful good. He's like, if you want to be neutral, that's cool. He's like, but evil would make more sense. But he's like, I'm gonna say it, you can't be neutral good or lawful good for this campaign. So we're like, okay,
You,
cool.
you know,
So like
I have a good question for you though. How would you what alignment would you attribute to Robin Hood?
chaotic neutral.
Um hmm, yeah. I was gonna put him more as a neutral good personally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would
Because
either of those.
because Robin Hood of Locksley is meant to be the steward of the land on which he sits, but it is, of course, taken over by the Sheriff Nottingham and his forces. And the thievery that he does is for the good of the people. So if you look at the good versus evil scale, he's definitely doing like an objective good from the perspective of like medieval serfdom and the mistreatment of those people like 100 plus years ago. And on the chaotic for chaotic good, but yeah, the chaotic to lawful scale, absolutely breaking the laws all the time. But he's only doing so in the
Yes.
context that these people fucking suck, and as a result, I would argue that guy is neutral good. Um,
Okay,
so I
I could
yeah,
see that. I don't know if I would
I'm
make a hard stance on that one.
for sure. No, I only make this comparison because I love running heists as one shots. And hey, if you guys ever want a heist one shot where you all get to be players, let me know. I'd be happy to do that for you from the full country away. But I Especially I was running heists, and then they came out with that book, Keys from the Golden Vault, and that whole book is from the perspective of running heists, basically for like the good guys. And you better believe we ran 3 or 4 of them from much more of a nah, we want money perspective.
Yeah.
But the heists that I came up with were absolutely for like ne'er-do-wells looking to make money, and they all treated it like they were pretty good characters despite stealing everything they came across. So
Gotcha.
I wanted to argue in favor of that just because of some players I had at my table.
Nice. Yeah, no, all so my character is lawful evil. Austin's character is lawful evil. And Matt's character I think is either chaotic neutral or is chaotic evil. And it's been interesting because this is still only our third campaign, but my character and Austin's character are temperament wise kind of similar, both planners, both looking ahead, both greedy and understand that they need each other to achieve their goals, but don't 100% trust each other. So there's
Yeah,
been times where like me and Austin are kind of pushing against each other, and it's been fun navigating that because it's been way different than the first two we did, where it was like a party, like going on an
we're best
adventure.
friends.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like me and Matt are, like I said, we're brothers. We played brothers in Austin's campaign. Like we played
hell yeah.
Monster Hunter Brothers. It was that, and that was a lot of fun too.
That sounds
But
pretty rad, actually. Yeah.
yeah, it
Mhm.
was it was a good time. We'll when we get back onto, I mean, we might do the brothers thing again. Maybe we'll do it for a one shot or something. But okay, so this we'll see if you can answer this one quickly. Maybe we'll put a timer on you for this one. Favorite drink, favorite snack at the table.
Uh, because I talk so much, it's got to be coconut water or ginger tea. And snack, I learned early that trail mix is perfect for me because it includes a little bit of everything and it gives me cause to keep drinking because it makes me thirsty. Boom, fast answer.
Perfect. Awesome. Um, okay, and then so this one is probably not going to be as quick of an answer, and then this will
Try
probably be
me.
like the last question for you. We're already,
Yeah,
we're thinking hour and a half ish. We're kind of like right on that point.
we're having too much fun. Let me
No,
see though. I'm gonna try to be
dude, this
efficient
is
here.
awesome. Like, I can talk about we talk about this shit and go on tangents for fucking ever, dude. Okay.
Don't try me. I will.
Matt in the chat, Oakenleaf. So that was our characters, the Oakenleaf brothers, the Monster
Nice.
Hunters. Okay, so high fantasy, high magic versus low fantasy or grounded. Do you have a preference?
I see the merits in both, but I do prefer high fantasy, high magic.
Cool. Reasons.
I can expand, but I won't. Yeah, okay. You just asked reasons. Yep.
That one I want to hear the expansion because you have
No,
more.
100%.
We've only really done high fantasy up to this point. So my campaign that we're doing next is going to be the first one that's going to be a little more grounded survival based. So I want to
Nice.
hear both sides of it.
Let me see. In a high fantasy environment, you can still come across entire countries of individuals who don't touch magic. But there's certainly an allowance for it, and there's sort of a whoa, did I just walk into a new world effect for individuals who come from a low magic, like whimsy environment, and then find themselves like going through the veil, if you will, like AKA walking a couple of miles into a different area, and there's all of a sudden a lot of magic. So high fantasy environments to me just open up possibility. You don't necessarily need everybody riding like Marty McFly hoverboards created by an artificer to make it feel like a high fantasy environment. But high fantasy implies that while everybody's on their way to their 9 to 5 and they're planning a heist where they have no magical assistance, there still is like a benevolent dragon flying through the sky. That said, I cannot stress enough that a lot of my favorite stories and properties, Lord of the Rings, Mistborn, are in a low fantasy yet still magical environment. So while there is room for both, I just prefer high fantasy because it gives for more makes for more options and more room to expand.
Nice. Okay. No, I mean that
Yeah,
definitely makes sense. The reason I'm doing more of a survival, lower fantasy, you could say like there's still going to be magic and things like that, but it's definitely going to be more. It's just we haven't done it before. I
yeah,
know the first campaign that we did took place in not in Baldur's Gate, but on the same continent. Austin's campaign took place in 10 towns. Chris's campaign is taking place in Baldur's Gate, so we've been in the high fantasy arena for. I completely the campaign that I'm doing next was from the ground up, homebrewed, like my own planet, the whole story, all the like the monsters, everything is going to be like homebrewed, but I told the guys from the
Nice.
ground, like from the start, I told them you have to make 2 characters each. I was like, it's gonna be brutal. I'm starting you at level 1. Like it is a harsh
Yep.
environment. Like just from me, like to tie this back to what we were talking about with like XCOM and turn-based and strategy, and like I like there's
Consequences.
you make a misstep, there's
Mhm.
going to be consequences. And I told them, like, if you guys come out like out of the gate and you want to hit everything head on, you're going to die. I like I'm just, and I told them like
We're the first characters to die.
I'm gonna right. That's why I told them like create 2 characters, throw it in the campaign and D&D Beyond. Because if one of them dies in the first 5 minutes, like I'm not gonna, I don't want you just sitting there the entire session. You know, like I'll.
You want to really raise
Do
the
you think I should?
stakes?
What's
No, no,
up?
you certainly could and should. As a matter of fact, so Curse of Strahd is a great love of mine. I've used it as a gateway for a bunch of friends to try D&D, and quite a few times I've handed players level 5 character sheets or level 5 equivalents of the characters they just made, and I said, "You're going straight to Strahd's castle," just as a means of like meeting the vampire lord right up front, and not having a single chance. It's sort of like Final Fantasy 12. You start off as like a level 5 character, and then you go fight the main bad guy. And then you all of a sudden are in the shoes of his little brother, and that's who you're going to be with for the entire game. But like the whole "you're going to die for a session" mechanic is a tried and overused trope, but it could be really fun when your players know that, yeah, we're gonna die. Like, let's just go for it. If you really want to raise the stakes, a little bit of a tip I have, because I have done something similar, encourage your players, if they're willing, to make dramatically different characters that have different purposes and skills and expertise. And if there's a story reason to have it be the case, if they go back to like a safe space before launching into the next section of adventure, give them a chance to switch one of those 2 characters they're playing, because they'll, just like in XCOM games, come to love those characters at the same rate. And
Interesting.
when one of them falls, they'll have a little bit of an attachment to the other, but like the long-term play use of that different skill to different utility, I need this character to be able to complete these tasks, loss will mean that much more now that they're stuck with, or like only beholden to being able to use the other. Just something for you to mull over. That can be really tough to write around, I know from experience,
I was
but
just gonna
it
say
could
shit. I
have.
got to think about that. That's a cool idea to give them, let them have both characters, and be able to
Yeah.
kind of plug and play them when they feel like it makes sense.
And it
Interesting.
depends on story too. Like, it wouldn't
Yeah.
make sense for Joel and Ellie to be halfway across the country between Boston and Utah, and for like his stepbrother to jump in Philly and be like, "I'm the better sniper, let's go," and it's like, "You're right, I'm gonna go over here."
Yeah.
Uh, one one last thing for you, and then I'm sure you'll want to wrap up here in just a sec.
Yeah. Sure.
I There's a book series called Dies the Fire, or at least it's called the Emberverse, loosely speaking, because there's like 5 different book series called the Emberverse. But in Dies the Fire, in 1998, there's a big flash, and all of a sudden, gunpowder doesn't fire hot enough to shoot bullets, gasoline doesn't burn hot enough to propel cars, and electricity just doesn't work. So people start going back to history books. They start meeting with like LARPers and people from the Society of Creative Anachronism, and they take like wheel springs from cars. They're making new swords, new armor. And I ran a campaign in that universe. It probably only went about 6 sessions, and everybody died. And they said, "That was fun. Can we go back to healing?" But it was really fun to learn that, oh shit, a long rest is a full day. No, sorry, a short rest is a full day, and a long rest is like a full week. Like, these guys can't go fight every cannibal, every like wolf pack. Like, so I'm excited to see what you do with your harsher campaign. Not even, I'm not giving advice here. Just like, it was based on that universe. They're good books too, by the way. He was obsessed with Lord of the Rings, and I learned a lot about archery just by reading the way he described it. But have fun doling out those consequences, because I sure did. And I gotta go on mute because my dogs are barking.
No, it's all good. Yeah, no, and it again, the whole reasoning behind this was just because we're just picking and trying new different things that we haven't really done yet. So then the first campaign that I ran, Austin Austin is still the only character that died, and me and Austin had talked like after the session, because we could have had him, roll a new character and it would have been fine, but it was his suggestion, like, hey, could I come back as like a paladin, kind of like he was a barbarian. And he still came back as a barbarian, but would it make sense? And I was like, all right, let me think about that for a little bit. And we had him come back as like an acolyte of Helm, because his character was
Nice.
his big barbarian that died in like a Colosseum battle, protecting his and like being the tank, like literally being in front of the other two party members and just basically getting the shit kicked out of him, and was eventually killed. And I was like reading about Helm, and I was like, okay, Helm's whole thing is you're a defender. You are the defense, and whatever you're defending, you defend it to the end. Like Helm saw this dude in an arena battle, outnumbered, and just standing up to everybody, protecting his allies, and he gets killed in combat. Like that's cool. I could tie that in. Like that makes sense. Like to me, I was like, cool. That makes sense. That's a cool idea. Let's try it. Um,
That's rad as hell.
but that Austin
It's
was
a
the
good
one who
change.
had mentioned it to me after the session, like, hey, but he wasn't like, oh, this is what I want to do. He was like, hey, could we do this? And I told him, I was like, let me check it out. Let me think about it. And we came back, and I was like, yo, this is cool. Like, this will how we'll start with it the next session. Like, they're gonna he's doing better. I saw you posted something the other day. You had to take him to that's uh Merlin, right?
So that was Morgana. They're named after Merlin and Morgana of King Arthur lore, but Merlin, the cattle dog who just jumped on her and is off screen, is the one who, unfortunately, we were playing fetch, and I threw a fastball, caught him right in the face, unfortunately. So
Jesus.
he had to go in for blunt force trauma, but no concussion. His eye is fine, and you would never tell he's injured now. But yeah, that's what happened there. You heard it here first, stream. I accidentally hit my dog really hard in the face with a Nerf ball. They're good
All
though.
right.
Yeah, and Morgana is just hungry.
Nice. All right. Yeah. Well, this has been awesome. Before we wrap up, do you have any questions for me, or for like about our group, Crit One and Done in general, anything like that?
So many, but that would take us at least another half hour. Yeah. No, it's been an honor and a pleasure. I'm so glad to have been the first guest here. Open offer, by the way. Would love to run a session for y'all, and might be 2 to 4, but uh, it's been a great time getting to talk to you over the last week, where I've caught up on a lot of the stuff that you guys have been able to post, both here on Twitch and on Instagram. It's been great seeing the way that all of you play and the things that you do together. So I hope I get to interact with not just you in the future, but the whole squad. Thanks for being another part of the community, because much like yourselves, my favorite part about starting a Dungeons and Dragons Instagram was getting to know other people who love this game and games like them. That was the whole reason I did it, and it's going really well so far. So thank you. I'm sure I'll ask questions again in the future, but I don't want this to go too long, so we can all get to the rest of our night.
Yeah, man. No, this has been awesome. I've had. I mean, we're definitely gonna keep. I mean, even just when we posted that, hey, we're gonna start doing this talking crit thing where we, just interact more with the community, and for us, for me specifically, I want to learn more stuff, like more tips, like that. That would have never occurred to me. Like, yo, let them just like we said, like in XCOM, like you can have 20 soldiers, but only four of them are on a mission at a time. That doesn't mean you don't have the other soldiers that are in the barracks, or they're at home, or they're taking care of their normal shit. Like then maybe they can't be a
Exactly.
full-time adventurer on the road 24/7.
I
But
can't I can't believe I forgot the main point of that too. By the way, it'll mean that there's mixes and matches of the party, like being like
yeah,
character 1, 2, 3, like with A, B, C, and that means that if somebody eventually dies and the new character has to join, it's not no chemistry. You have to figure it all out. Like, where do they fit in this group of the other two people? But
yeah,
no, we've been getting along this whole time. We have like a good party composition right off the bat. But anyway,
interesting.
yeah, I'm glad
No,
I gave you some jumping off points, and I'm excited to see if you take any, if you take none, or if you do something in between.
none. No, I'll probably end up taking some of it for sure. Listen, man, this has been awesome. Definitely, when we've talked about doing different kind of one shots in between our campaigns, so if we can figure out a way for you to virtually run a one shot for all of us, we've talked about this before. We would love to actually be able to get to play the four of us, but we can talk about that another time. I
Just
mean,
put a TV on the wall where you guys have your DM sit in Chris's basement, and it'll let you all still be in the room together. It'll be perfect. We'll talk about that
awesome.
soon, I'm sure.
Hell yeah. All right, man. Well, listen, I appreciate everybody hanging out, chatting back and forth with us. This has been our first episode of Talking Crit, here with Dungeon Samster. Does anything you want to plug, Sam, before we cut out? Uh,
uh, Yeah, every other Monday, I'm on a show called Dress to Quest, and that's on the Tabletop Misfits Twitch. It was this last Monday, so if anybody's interested in seeing some shenanigans in Icewind Dale, tune in for our next session, which is going to be on the 16th of June. And then very soon, Tabletop Misfits, whom I'm closely affiliated with and hopefully taking a little bit more work on with soon, is going to be launching a Lord of the Rings show called the Myths of Moria. I had to think about that for a second. And stay tuned for more news on that because we're trying out the system, the One Ring RPG from Free League Publishing. But more importantly, once again, thanks for having me. So glad to have met you this way, and hope to talk to you all a little bit more later.
Awesome. All right, thanks everybody. We'll talk to you later. We have our next episode of the Thieves Gambit is going to be next Friday. We have our first virtual guest who's going to be joining. We're going to announce that probably on Monday. We're pumped. This person is going to be joining us. It's going to be really cool. But that's the 13th, next Friday, episode 9 of the Thieves Gambit. Again, thank you, Sam, Dungeon Samster. Talk to everybody later.